across Cairo in pockets of demonstrations to try to show that really popular support was with Mubarak. And then mobilized, it went all out. And in the evening, went with a ferocity of attack against the demonstrators here that left people shocked, got completely shocked of it. You should know, everybody now knows what downtown Cairo looks like. You know, you've got the Intercontinental Luxury Hotel, you have the Hilton Luxury Hotel, now to be renamed the Ritz-Carlton Luxury Hotel. I don't know if they say luxury hotel, I'm throwing that in. But anyway, you get the idea. Then you have the burnt-out NDP headquarters, and then you have behind it the Cairo Museum. Now, behind that Hilton is a huge open construction site, which is where the thugs got the enormous numbers of rocks, bricks, iron, bars, and so on, that they pitched over a night and a half at protesters in Tahrir Square. But the regime overstepped it. The estimates, by the way, being there, at one stage, before the dawn on Thursday, it was not clear whether the square would have been held. Had they overrun the square, that would have been the end of the process and would have been an even bloodier situation because the regime would have taken reprisals. But those who stuck it out, and it turned the entire country even more in favor of the revolution. Now, my sister was very upset with me because I took her son to the demonstration that day. Okay, so it wasn't the best day to take my nephew to a demonstration. I have to say, in my defense, the boy is 37 years old. Some mothers, never say anything against her. She was obviously worried. She came down herself on the Friday with medical supplies for the people who had been in Tahrir. In other words, the back and forth led to the winning of the hearts and minds, and you began to see cracks in the entire edifice of the regime. So some leading businessmen, some had peeled off right at the beginning, because they understood that 31 years of corruption just isn't in the best interest of, doing business. And they understood that half of it was being diverted to the Mubarak family fortune rather than to, there's a whole, the problem with corruption is it just gets a life of its own. You had journalists beginning to say that they wanted to get rid, for example, at Al Ahram, which was the state paper. The journalists said, we don't want to work anymore, get rid of the editor. This is just a censored rag, we can't have it. You began to see reports on television of the demonstrations inside Tahrir Square. That is, you begin to see a seismic shift. And I think the calculation by the army, which intervened after the police were withdrawn, that if we do not do something about the head of state, if you don't give an inch, they may take a mile, whatever the expression is. That is, if you don't produce some kind of reform, you're going to get an even bigger revolution. Because if you remember, Mubarak's compromise was to get the former head of the intelligence services of the army to be, you remember the buffer? He found Suleiman. What a buffer. What a buffer this guy is. The henchman he had in charge of military intelligence, here's the face of reform. That did not fly really well amongst Egyptians. Now, Mubarak then resigns, and there has been, and still is in Egypt, a battle every day, every week, every couple of weeks, for opinion, for how to mobilize. I went back to Egypt again 2 weeks later, and at that time, you had strikes broke out in large numbers of workplaces, people demanding the right to contracts. That is, a lot of labor in Egypt is completely casual. You're not even assured of an annual contract, so that's one of the demands. I know the Ministry of Health, I had to go to the Ministry of Health for a number of reasons, and there were 2 strikes by different clerks and groups of people. You had demands by cops for greater rights in the Society of Demonstrations outside the Ministry of Information. What I'm trying to describe is that what we see is the first phase of a revolt, which is opening up in Egyptian society questions about the whole structure of the society. So that you have the example, because I know I'm speaking on a campus. Did you know I'm speaking on a campus? Wow, when did you figure that out? Sorry, that's just a little aside. Student protests against university administrations launched Revolution Union. And the article reads, hundreds of Cairo University students protested Monday, demanding the resignation of the university's president and deans of their faculties, accusing them of being part of the ousted regime. The students, joined by numbers of professors, were demanding the appointment of deans and heads of universities be via fair election, supervised by professors a new set of student regulations, and a reformed university law.
Hell yeah.
Now, not a bad idea. You might want to take that up with UNT. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of people beginning to try to claim their rights and their place in society. The Army, which appeared neutral, has moved very sharply to ask for a return to normality, which means no more strikes, no more demonstrations, and so on and so forth. And there is a battle for the future of Egypt in the making. I believe that the scale of the mobilizations that have taken place is the only guarantee for the revolutionary process to continue. That is, I believe that they couldn't repress the movement in January and February because the scale of the movement was so big. But that those who still control the economy, the military, and the state structures of Egypt are not about to just give up state power and walk away into the sunset and say, you know what, you've convinced us that the needs of the majority of people come before our power and privilege and so on. Now, 2 or 3 points in conclusion, because I've already gone over time. What began in Tunisia and spread like a wildflower. That works too? Yeah, but it's a different context. Like wildfire through Egypt. It's also spread into a certain number of other states. The script which was written by Ben Ali and Mubarak, which was, there's nothing wrong. Okay, I admit, there might be something wrong. No, it's not me, it's my cabinet. Fire the cabinet. I will never go. Goodbye, I'm leaving. That's the script. Rewritten by Gaddafi, rewritten in Yemen, and rewritten in Bahrain to say, don't give anything at all, and go with the school of the hard knocks. Go in immediately with suppression, using live ammunition, pushback movement. In the case of Libya, not just ammunition, but also in the first period, using arms, using helicopter gunships against his own population. I think that has stalled the process of the revolutions in the Middle East, but I do not believe that they will be successful in halting it. Because once that genie has come out of the bottle, there is really an awakening going on in the region. It means, I think, that we should also be wary of the attempts to contain the revolt in Egypt by the crocodile tears that are being shed now in Washington or in Europe about what's going on in Syria or in Libya. Let me be very clear. I stand with the popular revolts in Libya and Syria. But I do not believe for a moment that the United States government or the governments of Europe have the interests of the Arab masses in their hearts or any intent. They stood with Ben Ali till the last minute. They stood with Mubarak till the last minute. They are now scrambling to find a way to regain a foothold in the region, and above all, not to lose the Gulf and Saudi Arabia. Because from their point of view, the Gulf and Saudi Arabia, strategically and in terms of oil interests and geopolitical interests, is something that American foreign policy, or American imperialism, has had at the center of its plans to be the dominant global power since the Second World War, and they're not about to lightly walk away from that. And the last point I want to make really is to say, before closing and opening it up to discussion, is to make an unashamed plug for the site socialistworker.org, www.socialistworker.org. Reports by myself, but those are not the most important, I think, reports by Mustafa Ali, who is a friend who's stayed in Egypt throughout the last few months and is going back to set up a news bureau for us. In a couple of weeks, we're both going back to set up a news bureau. I encourage you to look for those reports, because what we'll be doing is also translating material that's otherwise unavailable from various sources, so people can get a real picture of what's going on in Egypt. And the last point is that I think we ought to stand in solidarity